18 past 6 on ABC Radio Brisbane and ABC Radio Queensland. David Iliff with you. Back in 2019, a book by Brisbane author Simon Cleary came out, which used a fictional story to shine a light on the psychological legacy of armed combat. And it did it in a way that few, if any, books had been able to do that before. The book was called The War Artist. And without giving too much away, it told the story of Brigadier James Phelan returning from Afghanistan with the body of a young soldier who had been killed under his command. And the first mark of the trauma that experience left him with was his decision to have the soldier's name tattooed on his body. But the story goes on to detail James Phelan's life completely unravelling thanks to post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, this story had a profound effect on many who read it, one of whom was a music teacher from Dalby State High School, Helen Gleeson. And in fact, Helen decided to use the story as the foundation of a project for her senior music students. And she got each of them to compose a song or a piece of music inspired by the war artist. And the band Topology helped along with that project. But Topology saw the potential to enhance the messages in The War Artist, the book, even further. Now, it's very much a work in progress, but the group are inviting you to an exclusive early sneak peek of this piece that they've created around The War Artist at an event later this month in Brisbane called The War Artist and an Evening with Topology. Christa Powell is one of the founding members of Topology. She joins me now. Morning, Christa.
Hello, good morning.
Lovely to have a chat to you. I'm yet to meet anyone who wasn't profoundly affected by this book. I mean, I certainly was. But what was it about The War Artist that persuaded you and the rest of Topology that not only was there more musical potential in the story, but that it lent itself to other storytelling mechanisms that we're going to see on the night as well? What makes this book different?
Well, it's about we feel very passionately about the power of the creative arts for healing and for communication. And that's what we do in a lot of our programs around regional Queensland as well. But to really put the message it's really to communicate the message of the book to people, I think is important for us.
And I mean, I don't want to give too much away, but what intrigues me about this evening that's coming up on April 26 is that there's a lot going on in that performance, and I'm a bit worried I don't have enough time to do it all justice, so we'll have to either keep the answers brief or we'll both have to talk really fast. But first we've got the music by Topology by John Babbage, one of your members. Are we talking songs or are we talking instrumental pieces as well inspired from this book?
Oh, it's all of that. Yeah. So it's instrumental pieces. We've also got vocal artist Pearly Black, who's amazing. Her style ranges from, Bulgarian folk right through to jazz to contemporary. So she's probably one of the most diverse, flexible vocal artists I've ever worked with. And also instrumental as well.
Okay, and then you've also brought in Bruce Curry, who's an artist. He'll pick up the story in animation, and what aspects of the story has he taken on? And then how do you get that to flow with the rest of the performance? This is what I find intriguing. If you've got a multifaceted performance, how do you get it to all gel together?
Yeah, this is really interesting, and we spent a lot of time talking about this. I mean, as you said, we're going into creative development. We've done a concept development. So we looked at, are we going to tell a literal story? Are we going to tell the narrative, like what happens? But then with visuals, you're going to end up with a movie, which is what we don't want. So what we want is a sensory experience. So the way we're approaching it, or the digital artist is approaching it, is we're looking at what happens to your body when you're exposed to extreme trauma and stress. So we're looking at the systemic system, what happens to blood vessels, what happens to your mind, all this sort of things. So he's going to represent that in digital art, basically. So we're going to have, then he's going to be driven by the music. So the music is going to be the emotional narrative. So you'll be able to feel and see, and the whole experience will be a complete sensory experience. So you're not going to see literal story of the book. You're going to see the emotional story. So, I mean, you read the book. There is an emotional story that just threads through the whole story, really.
Absolutely. But so he's going to almost sort of, take textbook medicine and put it on a screen, but not in a boring way, we have to
Yeah,
emphasise.
exactly. Yes, exactly. That's exactly right.
Just fascinating. And we have to say, too, and you've alluded to it there, that, this performance is not supposed to be a linear telling of the story of the war artist. That's not the aim at all. If you wanted to
No.
do that, we'd be all there all night.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But also live storytelling in the form of conversations with war veterans on the stage as well. That's going to be another dimension or another layer to the story.
Yes, and that's really important because as artists, we don't want to just make a work where we think this is what represents you feeling this. And that's really at the heart of what we're trying to do. We're trying to communicate, start the conversation, because PTSD is one of those conversations that nobody has. It's a silent killer, and literally it is killing people. So a ridiculous number of veterans are committing suicide, and not just veterans, other people it's not just veterans that have PTSD. It's really, I mean, there's approximately 3 million people in Australia at the moment who are suffering from PTSD.
Goodness.
So it's about to have that conversation without inviting people into the conversation. So people who don't want to talk about it because, oh no, that'll never happen to me. And then other people who can't talk about it because there are people who say, well, that doesn't exist. I can't see that on you. So we're talking on the night, there's going to be Special Forces Commando Tim Thomas, and he's going to talk about his experience. He came back from the Afghan war. His life also unraveled, and he's back. He's quite a well-known speaker now and speaks about his journey back to functionality, basically.
Fascinating.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the event will be at the 42 for 42 Memorial Gardens. And that also has 41 soldiers that died in Afghanistan war, and 42 represents also the dogs that also died in the war, but also represents the 42nd soldier represents the ones who are suffering back here, the ones that commit suicide, the ones that are living a difficult life post-war.
Yeah. So really, your choice of venues sort of ties the whole message together, really, in a neat package, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. Yep.
If you've just come in, by the way, it's 26 past 6. My name's David Iliff. You're listening to ABC Radio Brisbane and ABC Radio Queensland. Having a chat this morning to Christa Powell from Topology, and they've got an evening coming up on April 26th at the 42 for 42 Memorial Garden at Milton. With a series of stories, or one story told in multiple different levels, based on the novel by Simon Cleary called The War Artist. Just lastly, Christa, is this the most ambitious project that Topology has taken on? Because you've done some amazing stuff in terms of storytelling with music and multifaceted, multimedia productions. But is this the most complex one you guys have ever taken on?
Yeah, I think so. Is it artistically more complex? I'm not sure. I mean, we're not afraid of a challenge, but I think the content, is probably the most ambitious project, because we really don't want to just be one of those arrogant artists that just go, oh yeah, this work represents everybody. And I know you can't do that. Art can't be everything to everybody, but we certainly want to make sure that we have enough conversations so that we're really truly representing really what it is like to live with PTSD. So that's the ambitious challenge.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And we have to emphasise that what we'll see on April 26th, just finally, Christa, is very much a work in progress. So it's not going to be the finished product by any stretch. But when do you, what's the time frame for when you'll have the production finalised, that you'll be able to sort of take it on the road and do a proper production and say, this is it?
We're hoping for 2025 that it'll be on the road. So in another year, and by the end of 2024, we hope to have a finished product. And then there's always a period of tweaking and reshowing and having, but yeah, on the 26th, it's going to be a rare. I mean, it's very rare that anybody gets to look behind the scenes at the bare bones of a work, and this is what that'll be. There will be some projection. Obviously, it's not a theatre venue where it's at, so we can't use all the tricks of what you can do in a theatre.
Yep.
So it really will be raw and ready. And I think that's also, and the artist will be talking about, the techniques they use to communicate emotions and things like that. So it really will be, rather than a show, you'll be having a look at how an artist works to create that story, basically.
It sounds fantastic. I will have to leave it there. I'm out of time, but we encourage people to have a look at the Topology website for information on tickets. Christa, a pleasure to have a chat to you this morning.
Thank you so much, David.